You guys don't have time for YouTube anymore. Doug, I know you used to do a lot of like the more commentary stuff, but you just said now you just peek in to check with your readers pretty much. Like,
Right.
so when it comes to a lot of the whole like culture war discussion stuff, you've kind of just left that to the new kids on the block and the old guard that's still here.
We've gotten some criticism because people are like, oh, well, Mark and Tim turned tail the moment they started working on Common America. Like, they don't want to touch the Trump stuff anymore. And I'm like, no, we don't touch it because he's not in office anymore.
Isn't that cute?
And people are like, well, but Common America is not a political book. And it's like, well, it hasn't been a political book since we debuted it in the spring of 2020. Like, if you look at the first volume, it's just not a political book. So Black Ops isn't a political book either. And we've been working on that since 2017. So for some reason, people just think like, well, I'm shocked that they're not continuing like commentary into culture war. It's like, well, part of it is that one, there's no place for it in Common America or Black Ops. I think we touch on it with a light motif, but one thing that we've always done is it's like we write it in a way where we feel like it should be perennial. Like, for example, right now in the second saga, they're combating kind of like the dark suits and this idea of like light pollution. Well, light pollution is kind of a real thing, but it's not like at the forefront of people's minds. It's just a substitute for, think of any global catastrophe that has occurred in the last 30 or 50 years that people get hyperventilated about, whether it be like the hole in the ozone layer, global warming, global cooling, you name it.
Acid
It's
rain.
Like, yeah, acid rain.
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
100 years from now, you should be able to read it and be like, oh, this is a general analogy for just whatever the latest thing is that people are getting hyped and overworked about. So it's not that we don't have our own opinions. I mean, people can ask me privately and I'll kind of just talk about it. It's just that for where we're trying to focus at the moment, there's just no room for it. And just getting the feedback from a lot of our readers, they seem to appreciate it because it's like, you're able to succeed with the work alone without any of the culture war commentary attached to it. Like, just since we've been doing it, there's never been a time where it's like, oh, we're the victim, please back our book. Like, we're the ones who are being the aggrieved here. It's like, no, buy the book because you like it. I really don't care if you don't like me or Mark or whoever we might associate with.
So, I mean, Common America and Black Ops, etc., they're not branded as part of a culture war or as part of a movement, but we put in our feelings and our intentions into the narrative. We weave that in. It's kind of like you watch the movie like The Exorcist, right? And no one has ever branded The Exorcist as a pro-Catholic movie or a Catholic propaganda movie. But it is a movie where the Catholic Church intervenes and drives a demon out of a little girl and saves her life, you know? But no one says that that's a pro-Catholic propaganda movie. That's just part of the narrative. Our characters, some of them are Christians, some of them attend church, some of them do this and some of them do that. And it's just part of that narrative and part of that world and part of who our characters are. And if people interpret it and internalize it, you know, in certain ways, then that's part of just the intuitive narrative of
That's one of the things. Every once in a while, I'll see someone refer to either our books or Iconic and say, "Oh, they write quote unquote conservative books," and I'm like, "Okay, tell me you've never read one of our books without telling me you've never read any of our books."
Right.
Like, yes, I am a conservative Catholic man, but my books, it really kind of bothers me when people say that they're just conservative books, because it's like, no, I'm by vocation, I'm a writer and I take writing seriously, and I know Mark and Tim take writing seriously, and I don't want to write ham-fisted, the equivalent of, you know, Sean Hannity stories for Iconic Comics. Like, I want to write stories that 10 years from now people will read it and be like, hey, that's a really cool book about some combat exorcists.
We're trying to make very general moral statements that we feel like the average sane person will see at face value and just internalize as this is just nothing more than a PSA when we were kids. Like don't do drugs. I mean, you're not gonna refer to that as, oh, they're anti-Benadryl. But I just think maybe it's a byproduct of just the world we're living in. But in a way, it's a byproduct of quote unquote the culture war, because they're almost seeing too much into it.
It is unfortunately an aspect of this godforsaken culture war, and I barely even interact with the culture war because I'm just to the point now where I only involve myself in the war because I want to help bring about its end so that we can all get back to enjoying anime titties and Misha feet and kaiju battles and stuff like that. Like I'm so tired of constantly talking about is this or is this not woke? Is this or is this not anti-woke? Does this have a message?
That's why I watch horror movies, because they don't have any
Uh.
message at all. It's just people getting stabbed to death.
There's actually kind of like an overarching theme with a lot of the iconic comics properties is I think aside from maybe Mark and Doug, I've seen them opine occasionally on Twitter, but the work is typically not presented as a vanguard of any type of culture war. This is it, and if you like it, buy it. But we're not going to cast it in this light of, hey, if you want to stick it to this person or this group, make sure to support our work. Because there's that part of me that, because we can't sleep at night. Because in a way, you're like, well, they didn't buy it because they trusted us. Or they thought the writing was stellar. They bought it because they're like, well, I'm just going to give you money because I like your cause. And it's like,
right, I want to stick it to the mainstream or whatever. Want to win back the culture. What do you think of people who have the attitude of, in order to change things around, we all have to divert our attention from, say, the mainstream and all about face and just dive in on indie comics?
If the work is not good, it does not deserve your money. Bottom line. I hate to say it, but in 6 years of supporting some creators and supporting different books, honestly, not a lot of it is very impressive, because it's like, no, this is the alternative. It's like, cool, I have $10. Let me give it to you. It's like, okay, I got the book. I was like, let's see if this creates any waves. And I look and I'm like, grammar and spelling errors, no editor. You don't even have my attention by page 4. Wow, this is just like a rehash of this plot from this thing.
Do something else! Do something else! That's it! That's all we want! Stop sending me this bullshit! And then get mad when I fucking don't like it! Jesus! Goddamn tap dancing Christ!
I'm sorry, but in order to make waves, I firmly believe that what you do is support what is genuinely good, reject what is genuinely bad, and it has nothing to do whether it's an independent or a mainstream. For example, when we were having dinner the other day, I told Mark, I said, I kind of ran out of stuff to watch, so I was just pulling out old Disney DVDs from like the 90s and early 2000s. So I was watching like Ratatouille, which I haven't seen in 20 years. I was watching Tarzan, Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hercules. Like, things were, even at the time, they were not considered good movies. And because a lot of times they were comparing them to like The Lion King, Aladdin, whatever.
Right.
And I was like, holy cow, the first like 8 minutes of The Hunchback of Notre Dame is easily better than like everything I watched in the last year. Like, it's so good. There's people who'd be like, no, you don't touch it at all. And it's like, no, because it's good. It is meritorious for what it is. I mean, as a Catholic, I go back to St. Thomas Aquinas, who at one point he was asked, well, Thomas Aquinas, what about other religions? Like, what about them? What part of the truth do they say? Do we reject them wholesale? And Thomas Aquinas said, God loves everyone. He does not create any person without purpose. You find the truth and you accept it no matter where you find it. And you take like the Shinto religion. If they believe in an afterlife, if they believe in a kame, if they believe in spirits, that is obviously something in their religion where like the divine has touched them to the point where it's like, they know that there's something else out there. Accept that. There's no reason to reject it. That's my position. I know it's not a popular one, but it's like, if the work is good, doesn't matter if it's independent or if it's mainstream, accept it. If the work is bad, reject it. I don't believe in, well, you have to only support indies. Like, no. I mean, I think Doug would agree, because it's like, when we met 6 years ago, the entire point was, tell these corporations, if you like this property, show them what you like. Reject everything that you don't like. But Doug is a pretty scholarly expert when it comes to this type of thing, so I guess I'll take his take on it over mine easily.
I actually recently had a conversation with Christopher Lawrence, who does the No Heroes podcast. He has on YouTube, and we were talking about the Top Gun movie. Hopefully this wasn't off air, but he was like, like, I'm not sure whether I should see the the Top Gun movie or not. What do you think? And I was like, I've heard nothing but really good things about it. Because he was like, I don't know if I want to support the studios. And I was just like, listen, if it's a legitimately good movie, especially if it harkens back to what we loved about the, you know, the 80s movies, but it's like 2023 or whenever it came out, 2022. I feel like on a case-by-case basis, you do want to reward something, like Tim was saying, that's legitimately good. I don't want to issue blanket statements and be like, I will never support anything that it comes out of Marvel ever again. And it's like, no, I feel like if there are creators, writers, and artists who are behaving like professionals and they're putting out good work, I do want to reward that. But I'm also aware that I've been bitten multiple times and I'm very wary of these companies. So my wallet, I don't open it up nearly as fast as I used to.
If the product is bad, don't buy the product, regardless of if it's, you know, corporate or indie. If a comic book is bad, if it looks bad, it has bad art, bad writing, bad everything, but someone is selling it to you on the narrative of the culture war, it's like every dollar you give me is a dollar that doesn't go to Marvel or DC. And, you know, be a little suspect of that if they're trying to sell you like mud in return. And that's what some of these books are. It's like, buy what you want, you know? Like, I don't buy any new Marvel comics because there's no new comics coming out of Marvel that I'm interested in. But what I do buy is I buy their Epic collections, which are these really nice trade paperbacks of comic books from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s they've been putting out in like a chronological order. Or like, you know, I'm not interested in anything new Star Wars really, but there have been a re-release of the old books from the 80s and the 90s that I had never read. In terms of indie comics, I hope he starts up like Volume 3, but I picked up Volume 1 and 2 of Earthworm Jim from Doug TenNapel. When I read them, there is nothing in them that is culture war, quote unquote. There's a part where a character named Farmer Jim sits down to dinner and he says grace, and that's it, you know. And the rest of the book is just, you know, an earthworm in a spacesuit fighting aliens. It's just a good, fun book, but that's how it was sold. It was sold as a good, fun book, an indie book, but a fun book. And you could give a copy of that book to a kid, and the kid would read it and enjoy it. I feel like if you want to make change, then don't sell your comic as part of the culture war. You know, sell it as just being a good story with good characters and a good plot, and the people who read it will internalize that, and that will create the change that you want to see in the world.
Iconic Comics, our work, we're proud of it. There's not that many creators under our umbrella, but I think for what we have there are people who buy everything under that canopy because they'll tell you, like, man, I mean, not only are the quality of the books that are made good, but the craftsmanship on the inside is good too, and they're not selling based on any type of rage or any type of outspoken like political movement. Don't buy it for our glowing personality because you're not going to get it, but get it because you like the work.
Yeah. Some creators, I think, are going to end up, even if it's good work, they're going to end up pigeonholing themselves as just like the culture war creators. I think it's going to be the people who can, regardless of how they feel about stuff, that can have the work stand on its own. That's why you have continued to have my respect from both a peer standpoint and from a consumer standpoint. You have my respect. I always love talking with you guys because you have such great insight, but you're also still just real chill dudes that just happen to stumble into being dope ass writers and artists. Thank you for coming and chopping it up with your boy again, and thank all y'all out there for watching and listening. Till next time, I'm Animaine, and this has been Doug Ernst, Tim Lim, and Mark Pellegrini of Iconic Comics, and we will talk to y'all later.
Have a good one, guys. Bye-bye.
See ya.